exercise number 1, question 1 over here. So we're going to have to enter lower bound and upper bounds. Of course, the idea is the lower bound must be less than or equal to the upper bound. Otherwise, it's not valid. Okay, we're going to print some error. This looks very similar to what you were given for quiz number 2. So that should be rather easy to do. Okay, let's do the first one first. And then let's launch Eclipse over here. And let's just say week number 4, since we're now in week number 4. Although it's an exercise from last week, doesn't matter. Okay. So file, new, Java project. So CSE114, Spring 16, Week 04, Lab 1. Okay, that's what we do. Put underscore maybe. Okay. Now let's first of all let's see. Print between numbers. Okay. So let's create a new class over here. New Java class, and call that print between numbers. And then we have a main method there. Okay, this one should be very, very easy to do. And we simply don't have any loops yet. Actually, we do have loops. We do have loops to print out the multiple times. Okay, so now we have our scanner. Scanner input new scanner. Okay, system.in. Okay, good. So now we're going to prompt the user for integers. Hello. Okay, so we'll enter a lower bound. So enter a lower bound. Okay, so we I just don't write any comments, so it should be rather straightforward to you. So we'd say integer. Let's say lower is assigned to input dot next int. That's lower. Okay, and lower can be any number. Okay, basically it can be even negative if you like. And enter an upper bound. In that case, we just have a new variable here, an upper. So now we have to do some error reporting if necessary. So we would say it will only be valid if lower is less than or equal to upper. Otherwise, it's considered as an error. So in that case, you would say system.out.println. You can say error lower bound. You can say lower bound is not less than or equal to the upper bound. Okay, it's quite a long line, but yeah. Okay, let me see. Okay, over there, close that and semicolon. Okay. Okay, good. So that's the error message. Otherwise, what should we do? Because the lower bound somehow is less than or equal to upper bound, so now we can do a standard loop. Because in this case, we have very specific number of iterations that we have to do, which will be from lower to upper. Let me ask you this. How many numbers are we going to print out exactly in terms of the upper and lower? Now, let's just make it simple. Let's say lower and upper are both positive. For example, you might go from 5 to 10, or you might go for 6 to 11, something like that. So, exactly. Very good. Very good. Yep. There will be upper minus lower plus 1. Okay? Very good. Okay. Let's see. So let's just assume it's positive, just to make it easy, simpler. Okay, so now we can say for integer I, starting from lower, I less than or equal to upper, and then I plus plus. Okay, and then we can say system.out.println, and we can simply print out the number. And the output should be numbers between this. So this will be right before the loop. Right before the loop, we should really report to say what exactly we are trying to print. You can say system.out.println. You can say numbers between lower and upper. Okay, if you like, just make it a little bit better. Just put a colon here. Okay, so it's very easy. Okay, let us try that. So now enter lower bound. If I simply say 3, upper bound if I say 2. Error, lower bound is not less than or equal to the upper bound. Okay, that should be the correct error report for your program. So now on the other hand, if I say 2 and 2, it is going to print out just 2. Okay, because number between 2 and 2 would be just 2. Another one, what about 3 and 20? So 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 20. Okay, are we okay with this program here? Very easy. Okay, so let's go on to the next one, question 2. So here we are kind of extending the program by adding some user interaction. So I kind of changed the write-up a little bit. So from the very first version you got. So now the user is going to enter either 1 for yes or 0 for no to say if they want to continue with the interaction. So what I said before was just Y for yes and N for no, because you haven't learned about string yet. Something I will talk about today at the end. But let's just try with this slightly different version today. Okay, so now I would suggest I'm going to just create a new program here. I didn't suggest any name over there. So let me just create a new class over here. New class. What about continually print between numbers? Okay, just to say that we're actually going to prompt the user for their request, whether they want to continue or they want to quit. And I'm just going to copy this part here and then and show you how you can make the extension. So every time, I would say almost every time, whenever you want to have some interaction with the user and you simply don't know when the user is going to say, I want to quit. In this case, you don't know exactly how many times you're going to run the loop. So while loop will be better. Okay. But as I said today in the lecture, if you simply leave out the first and third part of the for loop, it's just equivalent to a while loop. But why bother actually having 2 semicolons there? So let's do a while loop here. Okay. So now, basically, the behavior is going to be almost the same as before, but now, as long as the user doesn't want to quit, we're going to keep letting them, enter new numbers for lower and upper bounds. Okay, that's what the extension is about. So you can imagine that whatever we wrote from the first class over there, imagine that's whatever we wrote. Now we're going to wrap it within some while loop, like a compound statement. That's what we're going to do. Okay, but somehow the tricky thing is how we figure out the state condition for that. Okay, that's the tricky part. Okay. For that, I would suggest we do the following. So we still declare our scanner over there, so we can keep using it. So now, let's declare a Boolean variable here, just to say whether the user wants to continue or they want to quit. So Boolean user wants to continue, and we have to give some initial value here. So I would suggest we simply give true in the very beginning. Simply means, well, initially we certainly have to let the user at least try once to see if they want to to see what their initial values for lower and upper bounds are. Okay, so we're gonna do while, okay, like that. So the condition would be simply user wants to continue, like that. Okay, so now we're going to simply just cut whatever we copied from the previous class and then paste it as the body of the while loop. Okay. So now, how do we actually update to actually prompt the user to say, well, would you like to continue? In that case, remember, so this is what we got from the previous class, and before we actually had a while loop, we simply said this would be the end of the program. But now this will not be the end anymore. It will just be the end of the loop. now, so at the end of the while loop, this is where we try to somehow to see how we can make a progress, like I++ place. But we don't really have a loop counter here. All we got is to have some answer from the user. So you would say, I can say, this is the end of the while loop. And sometimes you might find it useful to actually say end while. You can see you have a brackets over here, right, to actually say what that is supposed to end. And this one is going to end the main method. And this brackets here is going to end the class. Okay, just to have some annotation here. Okay, so now at the end of the while loop, we're going to prompt the user the following. Let me just go back and see, would you like to continue printing and that? Okay, so basically, would you like to continue printing? Enter 1 for yes and 0 for no. Okay, you can actually see that from your handouts. I'm just copying from the PDF just to save some time. Okay, and now we're going to read something from the user. So what about, say, integer variable here? What about just answer from the user? Input dot next int. So the user is going to say either 0 or 1. Okay. If answer is equal to 1, then we can say user wants to continue is equal to true. Otherwise, user wants to continue equals false. Yeah, there's a typo here. You can assume the user is going to, if they enter yes, there must be 1. Otherwise, it would just be treated as no. And this fragment here, if you look at, let's say, from lines 28 to 34. Let me just scroll a little bit up. So 28, so basically this block over here. Okay, this part over here. Somehow this part here can be simplified into just one line. If you try to recall our lecture from the selections. Because somehow you can see answer will be read from the user input next int. And if the answer happens to be 1, we're going to set it to be true. If that's not 1, then it's going to be set to false. So somehow, why not we simply just get whatever this value is and assign that to answer directly, to user continues directly. Okay. What I meant was, let me put this into comments here. That's version 2. Okay, that's version 1. You can simply just do the following. User wants to continue is assigned to whatever this is going to return back to you is equal to 1. Just one line. It would be okay if you still write the longer version. That's absolutely fine. But I think gradually you have to learn as you become more experienced. You'll realize that you can certainly simplify your code by writing what's in 28. Any question about how I can actually simplify from these lines here to just one line in 28? Any questions about that part? No? Maybe you can think about that and let me know if you got any more questions about that. Or you want me to explain again about this line here? Again? Okay, no problem. So let's think about this again. Somehow, let's think about this version again. Okay, just this version. I'll keep it highlighted. So this version is saying that we're going to read the input from the user and then store that value into answer. Right? Input, the user might enter 1, they might enter 0, any numbers. Okay. So we have in the if statement there, we say if answer happens to be 1, if this evaluates to true, then we're going to set user wants to continue to be true. Otherwise, we'll set it to false. So it seems like whatever value that this thing over here returns, if that happens to be 1, then we'll set it to be true. If that happens to be not 1, we'll set it to false. Okay. But this part here seems to be a little bit too overkill, a little bit too wordy. So why not we we just compare this value here, rather than storing that into some intermediate variable like answer, why don't we just compare the number directly with 1 over here, and the comparison result can either be true or false, and assign that result directly to user wants to continue. So that's what line 28 is trying to say. Yeah. Somehow we are trying to simplify the intermediate steps. That's basically what we're trying to do. But don't panic too much if you don't quite get it. I would say, let's say for your assignments, if you really don't feel so confident to write a one-line solution to this, feel free to still write a longer version. That's absolutely fine. But as I said, as you get more experience, you might find that one-line solution much better. Okay, just take some time. Okay, that's what we need, and I believe that's it. Let's give it a try. Yes.
Like when you get false, you have to get like by, I think.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so the by actually is to say if we exit from the loop, then we have to say bye to the user, right? So this here is part of the while loop. So one question for you. As you can see, the state condition here is simply user wants to continue. If we happen to exit from the loop, then what's going to be the exit condition for that? It's false, like a not, like a negation. So the negation of user wants to continue, which means it's false. Okay, just something to check. Okay, let me put some comments for you. After the while, exit from the loop. That means not the case. User wants to continue. Okay. In this case, we're gonna say system out dot print line by like that. Okay. Remember, you should really convince yourself why we did not actually put the by as the last step in the loop. If we did that, that means every time when we try to repeat, we're going to repeat the by, right? That's tricky, right? So everything has a reason over there. So why do we put in one place but not the other? Okay. Okay, let me put a comment for you. You should not print by here. Okay, think about why. I just explained. Okay, let's give it a try to get a feel. So enter lower bound, let's say 5 and 10. And then would you like to continue printing? If I say 1, they would say enter lower bound, let's say 2 and 15. And then print all the way 2 to 15. Would you like to continue printing? So now because we're only checking to see if the user input is 1, otherwise you'll be considered as a no. So it doesn't have to be 0. If I say -2, for example, bye. Okay? Any questions about this extension here? So basically, conceptually, the extension is we take whatever that was developed from the very first class and then wrap it as the loop body of a while loop. That's what we did. Questions? No? Are we good? Okay. So now we're going to extend the program a little bit further. Okay, that's question number 3. We're still going to, yeah. Oh, actually, that's the old version. So that's actually using the string. So one of the new version, I just opted the PDF on the web. You can check that as a number. I'm going to show you that one as well. Okay, let's go on. So now for let's just create a class here. So now we're going to introduce a third number. So we have lower bounds, we have upper bound. We also have some number called the middle number. Okay, class over here. So now we have continually print between 3 numbers. Okay, I'll just say that. Not a perfect name, but you can get a different name. So which means you got lower bound, the middle number, and the upper bound. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna say finish. So the code is going to look very similar to the second version. Conceptually speaking, remember in the second version we simply put the first version as a loop body under the while loop. But now we're going to keep this pattern here, but we're going to extend a little bit in the middle of the code in the loop body. That's what we're going to do. So the while loop stays there. Okay, it actually works perfectly well. So I'm going to again do the copy and paste. So if we can go back to the second version there, if you can just copy everything from this scanner declaration here until by over here, copy, and then I'm going to paste it over there. Okay, so now we have a lower bound, we have an upper bound. Okay, so now in the case where the lower is less than or equal to upper, we're going to prompt for one more number. Okay, it's like the first integer is positive, and we ask for the second integer. If second integer is positive, we ask for the third integer. Okay, so it's a nested if-else statement here. Let me just double check. So if you enter the middle number, okay, somehow it has to be in between. Okay, so now let's say, let me just copy this part here. Enter a middle number. Okay, a middle number. Okay, what about just middle? Okay, I'm going to get rid of this loop for now. We can write it from scratch later. So middle number here. So now we have to validate this middle number. So the constraint would be somehow the middle, that's what we already know in the number line, lower has got to be less than or equal to the upper. So now somehow we want to say the middle should be in the middle, of course. But how do you express that as a Boolean condition? To say middle somehow has to be in between lower and upper. How would you specify that? That's a question for you. Help me out. How do you say that? So we have lower, we have upper, and we have this middle number here, which we don't know yet if that's really in the middle. So that's something we would like to check, right? So how would you specify that? Using ampersand, using conjunction, very good. So what should be the two operands for the conjunction?
The lower bound is larger than or equal to the middle, and then the upper.
Oh, lower. You mean less than or equal to the middle? Yeah. I think that was what. Yeah. Okay. So somehow you want to say this part is the case. So lower less than or equal to the middle, and also this part is also the case. Like middle less than or equal to upper, right? That's something you want to do. Okay. You can say if lower less than or equal to middle, and middle less than or equal to upper. Okay, rather easy. Otherwise, so implicitly, what's the condition here? If the else part is reached. And so that should be not the case that this conjunction is true, right? So would you actually be able to tell it's actually simply not the case? Okay, it's actually not the case. Lower less than or equal to middle, right? Which means lower larger than middle, or middle larger than upper. Are you okay with this expression here? Actually, I jumped one step actually. Since I think that we should be quite comfortable with applying the logical law, the De Morgan law. Very good. In this case, you can simply say error. I'll just copy that. So just to be consistent, system.out.println. Okay, sorry. You will simply say error colon middle number is not in between the lower and upper bounds. Okay, but you should really see that we actually got two possibilities there. It's either lower larger than middle or middle larger than upper. Either way. Okay, so now here comes the for loop. The question says we're going to, let's see, within lower bounds and upper bounds, only odd numbers in between the lower bound and the middle number. Okay, so let's say we have already be sure. Let's say we got lower here, and we got upper here, and we also verify that it's actually middle is here. Okay, so we got some numbers here. We also have some numbers here. So that's sort of the counting points. So for this part here, we're going to print odd numbers only. Okay, and for this part here, we're going to print even numbers only. Okay, that's sort of the plan. And of course, if the middle happens to be odd number, we have to print middle as well. So that's inclusive. So we're going to include this part here and then start from there. Okay, that's kind of the idea. So how do we do that? So we certainly need a for loop, right? So we need a for loop, and we can say, again, we're going to go from lower to middle. So you can say for integer I equals lower, so there should be no surprise, I less than or equal to upper I plus plus. But now over here, we have to say, if the number happens to be in this region here, which means the number is less than or equal to the middle, and also the number happens to be an odd number, then we have to print it. Another possibility would be, let's say the number happens to be strictly after the middle number, and it happens to be even, then we have to print it out as well. Okay, so we got two possibilities here. Okay, that's also kind of similar to the little quiz I gave to you in the class to say you're going to print positive, even, and negative, odd, something like that. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to have if statement here. So we'd say if the value we are talking about, I here, is somehow less than or equal to middle, because the middle might be included as well. And I is actually an odd number. Mod 2 is equal to 1. In this case, we can print it out. Okay. Okay, and then we can print I. One question for you. Why did I not, in the if condition, say lower must be less than equal to I? I can say that, but it's not necessary. Why? Right? Let me try. Oh, so you can see here in the if condition here, yep. I did not write lower or less than or equal to I as part of the conjunction. Why is that?
Because at the if statement before we have the 20. I mean, like at the 21.
But 21 there, we're simply just checking lower and middle and upper. We didn't check the I. Right? So now my question is, if I put, let's say, if I put the following. If I put, let's say, lower less than or equal to I, if I put that, it would still be correct, but it's not necessary. That's my question.
Because you start from lower and then go up by 1, but you're less than or equal to upper.
Yeah, exactly. You can see that in the header of the loop, so line 22 there, since we just started I from lower, and then increment I gradually by 1, so there's no way you can actually go below lower. That's why. Okay, it's kind of like a, yeah, it requires some insight into the loop. Okay, I can certainly write that as a comment for you. Okay, we do not need lower because the loop counter I starts with lower. Similarly, we do not need I less than or equal to upper because of the state condition, right? Because the state condition says it's always going to be less than or equal to upper. If it's greater than, we will exit from the loop anyway. Okay, so you should really understand why it is not necessary to put these two conditions in the if statements. It would not be wrong, but it's just not necessary. Okay. Okay, let's just finish another one. The other one would be if somehow I is greater than middle and that happens to be an even number, then we'll also print it out. Okay? Questions so far? Let's give it a try. If I do this, lower bound 1, upper bound 10, middle number, let's say 15, which doesn't make sense. Okay, it would say middle number is not in between the lower and upper. That's good. I would like to continue, yes. 1, lower bound 1, upper bound 10. Let's say the middle number is 5, which means we're going to print 1, 3, and 5, and then 6, 8, 10. Right? So this is up to and including the middle points, we actually print the odd numbers only. And after the middle number, we print even number only until the upper bound. Are we okay so far? So that's the complete solution to exercise number 1. Okay, if you got any question, that would be the time to ask before I move on to arrays, which is much more exciting.
At the old version, like we have the yes one and first.
Oh, very good, very good. Okay, let me do that now. Okay, so let me just show you a small, another something new. But to do that, I will need to show you one small program in order to clarify, which is to compare string values. So let's create a new class, call that compare string values. Okay, let's do a class here. I forgot the main. Need a main method here. Let's do something very simple here. Let's say we have string S1. Let's say simply just CSE114. Okay. String S2. CSE114. Exactly the same. Okay, there's no trick here. Exactly the same. System.out.println. And I would say S1 equals S2. That's how we compare things, right? Compare numbers, compare characters. And now we're going to print out the result for S1 equals S2. Okay, you can also put a parenthesis if you like. How would you think the result should be? If I say S1 equals S2. Just tell me your intuition. Take a guess.
I think it's gonna be S1 equals S2, and it follows by SE114 and CSE114.
Oh, but actually, this one is going to compare, right? It's going to compare the two strings. Since we actually have we have the comparison operator, so the result is going to be Boolean. Yeah, it's going to be either true or false. Yeah. Take a guess. True, right? I will guess true as well. Let's see. So far so good. Okay, that one's fine. Let's do another one. Let's do this one here. Scanner. That one's good, but now I'm going to do another thing. So actually, that's a confusing part. Okay, scanner input. Scanner over here. Input equals new. Scanner system.in. Okay, let's say we're going to read two strings and compare them. Okay, so now system.out.println, and then let's say enter a string, and then you can say string S3 is equal to input dot next line. Okay, and we're going to enter another string. S4. Okay, for now I'm going to put the previous ones into comments for now. Okay, just for now. Okay, so now let's say S3 and S4. So now we're going to again to compare them. Dot out dot print line. So now the string values are not something that we specify specifically. Okay, it's something that we're going to ask from the user. So you can say S3, S4, and then here we're going to say S3 equal S4. Okay, that's something we're going to try. So enter a string. If I say CSE114, enter another string, CSE114. See what happens here. False. We used to compare these two strings just a minute ago. It says true, but now it says false. Okay? I know it's very confusing because we haven't taught you yet about classes and objects in Java. Okay, so this is something that I would like not to touch too deeply now. That will confuse you a lot. So let me just show you the correct way of comparing the strings, especially when you're trying to read them from the user. Okay, I promise that I will try to do a deep. I will give you a thorough lecture on that when we talk about classes and objects later on. But for now, the only use you will need is to read the strings from the user and compare that with some other string. In this case, you cannot use the equal sign. You have to use something else. Okay? Why? That's something I will try to explain to you later, rather than now. Okay? So now what you need to do is the following. Let me show you. So now this is something you have to do. Equals S4. So the dot notation simply means we're going to call a method called equals method. And then rather than using equals sign to compare, we're going to use the dot equals method to compare the two things. Yeah. Okay. Don't worry, if you haven't used this in the quiz, I'll give you the line. You just have to know where to put it. Okay. You certainly don't have to memorize just yet. So now we're gonna say S3 dot equals S4. Okay, let's give it a try again. Enter string CSE114. CSE114. In this time, if you use the dot equals method, it does compare the two strings by their contents. So it's CSE114 for both strings. So that's why in this case, it's going to say true, which is the result we want. Okay? Yeah. So now let's go back to the very original version of your exercise, which is to ask the user for either y or n. Okay? That's why I want to. So the only message you have to take for this is always use equals if you want to compare string values. Okay. So now let's just create another one. Okay, another class there, and then I will show you that version there. We got time. That's good. Okay. So what about I would just say. So what I used to call continually. Wow, it's a really long name. Continually print between three numbers. What about two? Okay, that might be easier. So continually print between three numbers 2. Okay, in this case, we're going to use, rather than the user enter either 1 or 0 for yes or no, they're really going to enter yes and no. Okay, that would be useful for your tic-tac-toe assignment actually. So it's good that Mike reminded me. That's good. Yeah, otherwise I will forget. Okay, let's try this. Okay, first of all, can we just go back to that version there, and we're going to do some copy. So now, can we copy from the line where we try to declare the scanner here all the way to when we said buy over there, everything basically. Copy that and then go to the new class we just created over there, and then we're going to paste it over here. Okay, like that. So now we're going to read something here. So that's sort of the one line we actually said before, right? So there are only a few things I need to change. can we just get rid of this? So that's not relevant anymore. Okay, so now just make it clean. Okay, so now the prompt would be, would you like to continue, let's say, either y or n? Y or n? In your case, maybe yes or no, something like that in your assignment, but you can modify that accordingly. So now, input the next int. I will show you a slightly easier way to write it. You can say string answer from the user is simply input, but now we're going to read a string from the user rather than an integer. Dot next line. Okay, that's the first part. And now we can say the following. Let me just write a longer version for you. That might be easier for you to understand. You can say if answer dot equals, right? Rather than equal. That's why I had to show you the difference first. If that's y, in that case, that means a yes. So that means user wants to continue should be assigned to true. Okay? You can feel free to simplify that, when you are doing the exercise on your own, but I'm just going to show you the longer version. Otherwise, okay, we don't need this line anymore. We can say user wants to continue is equal to false, which means only when the user enters y will they actually continue. If they enter anything other than y, they're going to quit, right? Okay. Let's try. Oh, and the lower bound, 1, 10, 5. Would you like to continue printing? Oh, why would it say by here? Let me see. Let me see. String. There is another thing which I need to mention. Just let me fix that, and then I will tell you what it is. Give me 1 second. Let me just bring up my assignment over here. So I think it is perfect time to talk about it. Okay, if I go to the assignments there. Okay, not solutions. Assignment 1. Over here. Okay, sorry. The PDF assignment 1 is over here. Okay, so there is a section which you have to read very carefully. So if you go down to the very bottom of the assignment there, so we got something to say the issues with the scanner and string. Okay, I'll leave it to you to read that section. So that's going to help you on using the next line. So basically, that is to say every time when you have the line like input the next int, always follow that by input the next line. Always do that. Okay, I actually explain in details in the section why you have to do it. But now I'm just going to apply that in my code. Okay, let me show you here. Let me go back to Eclipse over here. So I have input the next int, so I'll just follow by this. Okay, for the reason that I explained in the instructions. And then I have just another one, so I'll say the next line. I got another one here, so I'll say that. Okay, so now finally, let me try one more time. If I say 1, 10, 5, would you like to continue? Why? Okay, now it works. Okay. It sounds magic, but if you actually read through the explanation I put there, it's just some kind of limitation for Java library that we're using. Okay. Okay, so now let's say 1, 19, 10. Would you like to continue printing? No. Okay, bye. So now it's working. Again, what you gotta do in your assignments is every time when you're trying to use a line like this, when you say next int, you always have to have another line saying input the next line. That's what you're gonna do. Okay. Okay, any questions? So now you know how to do the string. Okay, just say input the next line and then use the equals method to compare the string contents. Don't use the double equal. That's not going to work. Questions before I move on to the rest? Which one? You mean to actually put this line here? Yeah. You know what? For this part, so the reason that we put line number 22 is actually for the very, very limitation of the library we're using. So for that, so please read the section there. So I did put a thorough explanation there. Yeah. Try to read it. If you still don't get it, come to me.
It's just kind of.
I know it looks very, very weird. But of course, in the quiz or in the test, if you forget about this line, that's absolutely fine. I'm just saying to make your assignment work, you have to put that line. Unfortunately, yeah, it's actually quite a known issue. Okay, good. If you have no questions, let's go on to the array. Okay, that's the handouts I gave to you today. So what about, let's see how much time we have. We have about maybe 25 minutes. That's good. I'm going to do some simple examples on the array. Everyone got the handouts? Good. Okay, let's do some simple examples first. Let's, you can see the array there. Let's reproduce that array in Java. Okay. Okay, let's have another class over here. Let's say simple array. And then with the main method there. So remember in the class today we said there are two ways for you to initialize the array. The easiest way is to use the curly brackets notation. So let's say version 1 to initialize that array in the diagram is to say integer square brackets, okay, and then that's a type, and then just call that numbers is equal to curly brackets like that, like when you do the if statement or loop, semicolon here. So now we're going to put comma separated values there. So you can see there, I'll just put it 940 and then 880, 830, 790, 750, 660, 650, and then 650, 590. 590, 510, and then 440. Okay, so far so good? Okay. We'll get to version 2 in a moment. Okay, version 2 is a little bit wordy. Let's do that in a moment. Let's say we got this array here. First thing we would like to know is system.out.println. How many elements are there? Array. Okay, let me do something using the escape sequence for you here. Let me put this escape sequence here. Numbers, like that. Okay, array numbers has this many elements. So you can say numbers dot length space elements, like that. Like that. Okay, follow? Okay, so the reason that I put this escape sequence is I want to include this the double quotes as part of the output to the console. So now if I launch the program, it's going to say array numbers has 10 elements. Okay, you can see now the numbers is like a name in quotes, right? But to do that in Java, because the quotes, if you didn't put as an escape sequence, you would confuse the Java compiler. They might think it simply might be the closing of the string literal. Okay, so now that's one thing here. And now we like to say, what about system.out.println? First, let me just use this notation then. First elements in, I kind of get an idea, so I just want to type. In numbers is, okay, so now we like to retrieve the first elements in the array. So you can say numbers 0, right? So that's how you get the first elements, because array indices always start with 0. On the other hand, let's say, what about last? Last elements in the numbers is, and you simply will do the size of the array minus 1, right? That's what we said today. And the size, since it's 10, as we saw from the previous output, so the maximum index will be 10 minus 1, which is 9. Okay, so the indices will be from 0 to 9, inclusive. If you run that, it's going to say first elements will be 940, and the last elements will be 440, as you can see from the diagram. That's really the case. So now, let me show you how things might go wrong. Okay? Let's introduce something from the user here. Scanner, and then input new scanner system.in, like that. Okay? So now we're going to do the following. We're going to prompt the user .out.println, enter a valid index. So it can be 0 up to 9. So we give the user explicit instructions about what value they should really enter. Okay? Like that. Okay? And then let me just put this into comments for now. And then after this, we're going to say system.out.println, like that. And then we're going to say elements at index whatever the user enters. Oh, forgot about that. So you can say integer I equals input dot next int, like that. So the user is going to enter some input, some integer value there. At index I is AI. Okay. Oh, sorry, not AI. Numbers. Okay, so now you can see rather than passing some specific value here, we're going to let the user choose which index you would like to look into the array. Can you see any problem for the program here? There's a logical error. It compiles. At the runtime, what might occur that can go wrong? So basically now we don't specify the values on our own. We simply ask the user to tell us which index you would like to look into in the array. And you can see in line number 8, we are simply reading an integer from user. Just an integer. No constraint. What can go wrong? For example, let's say, what if the user enters -1? If they enters -1, then we're going to store -1 into I, and then we're going to say element at index -1 is, and then we say numbers -1. And -1 is simply not a valid index for the array. So we're going to run into so-called exception. Right? Let's give it a try. So if you try that, although we tell them you should really enter something from 0 to 9, but not everyone reads instruction, as you know, in real life. So you can enter maybe something like a -1 over here. That's what you will get. Okay. So basically, let's have a look. So we are having some array index out of bound exception, -1. So -1 is causing that exception. But if you see over there, it tells you which line actually is having that exception. If you click on that, it goes to here, tells you that we actually got the error from this expression over here. So you can see numbers I, because I has been stored as -1. So we were trying to do that with -1. Okay, another example for you. So what about we simply say 10? Okay, 10 is also not valid. If you do that, again, 10 is not good. You also got the array index out of bound exception. Okay, so now, since you learned about the if statements, so how should we handle this? We want to, well, it's like calculating the area for a circle, right? When the radius is positive, or at least it's not negative, then we go ahead and calculate that. Otherwise, we have to give some error message, right? Similar idea. Okay, so what we should do is to have an if statement here. So you should do something like this. Okay, let me just put array, maybe a little bit up to the front. That's easier. Okay. Okay, just put it there. Okay, now once we read I from the user, we can say if I is in between 0 and I less than or equal to numbers.length minus 1, which means it's actually a valid index. In that case, we can ask the user to actually print. We can print out the elements for the user. Otherwise, we can say that system.out.println. We can say I is not a valid index. Okay, just using the if then else statements to make sure whenever you want to do numbers I, you're always doing that with a safe index. Okay, let's try that. So now if you try minus 1, minus 1 is not a valid index. Of course, if you do another while loop, you can actually keep repeating the prompt with the user. I didn't do it, but certainly you can do that from previous exercise. Let me try one more. So if I say 10, that would say 10 is not a valid index. So now if I give some valid index here, what about just 1? And according to the diagram, it's going to give me 880. Okay? Can I get an idea? Okay, good. Okay, so let me see how much time I have. I have about maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So let me see. So what I want you to do, maybe not today, maybe after you go home. So these are simple things you can try. I would maybe go on with the more complicated things. So on page 1 and 2, we actually got quite a few code fragments there, which shows you how to actually manipulate with the array, how to do assignments. Especially you can see the box on the first page there, it says number 0 is assigned to 940, and numbers 1 is assigned to 880. So that's something you can try yourself. Okay. One thing to show you. So how to use the breakpoints for arrays. So now let's say this is where we try to initialize the array. Let's put a breakpoint over here. Yes. In the handouts?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you got one. Okay. Let's see how the array will appear in the debugger. Let's put a breakpoint over here, line number 6. So that's right before we try to initialize this array. If you say run debug as Java application, okay. So now we are in this line over here. If you go to variables, and we don't have numbers yet because we haven't declared that yet. But if you say step over, so now you will see that numbers is there. You can see in Eclipse quite nicely, it tells you what the content is in the array over here. Okay, but now even more, if you expand the arrow here, it tells you in index 0 is this number here. In index 1, it is this number here. In index 2, it is this number here, until you got index 9, because you got 10 elements in the array, right? Okay, that's something to show you. Later on, if you want to use a debugger, that's how you see the contents of the array. Okay, let me go back to Java here, and let me see. Let me see what we should do. So, let me see. That's how you use the breakpoints. And on page 2, you can see that's how you can actually do very simple loops to print out the contents of the array. Okay, that one is also very simple. You can also try them out. Okay, so now I would like you to take just about 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. Just read through the questions on page number 3. Just read it through to see what it is asking you to do. And then I'll do it with you together. I'll give you some hints. Okay, and then I'll leave the rest to you back home. So we can discuss again on Wednesday. Just take 5 minutes. Make sure you understand what the questions are asking.